The Wild and Woolly Ozarks, episode number 16, James Matthew Owen. Gather up the kids and the old folks, shut down the contraptions and dim the lights. Put away your pocket-sized magic lantern shows. Close your eyes and listen. It's time to strike off on the paths less traveled, down the trails through the hills and the hollers, along the riverbanks and into the brush. Hear tales of things forgotten get told. Join me as we venture into the Wild and Woolly Ozarks. I'm your native guide and host, Champ Heron. Welcome back, gentle people. It's been a long time. It's been too long, in fact. Thank you again for finding your way to our fireside. Just pull up a chair and rest yourself. This is being recorded Friday the 13th. Hadn't thought about that yet. I should have had something prepared. But this is being recorded, and it appears we are in the middle of early spring. But don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Before we go any further, if you haven't subscribed, followed, or just made any other public declaration of support, please do so now. It helps us grow and upgrade the podcast. It brings exciting episodes like the one you're listening to all our friends and neighbors. So folks tell me they love the podcast when I'm out. I've had a few of you, but we've had kind of a podcast hiatus. And we've got a lot of ideas down of what's getting ready to come up. But I want to just for a moment talk about the podcast. We basically have not produced anything. We still have one episode out there as of this recording to come out. Should be out before this one. Unless we cannot resolve the technical issues. And it is a talk about the history of Silver Dollar City. I'm so excited about it. I really want to hear it myself, and our technology basically did something with it. We had problems with the podcast software we're using changing ownership and our subscription not getting transferred over. And so we have rectified that. We should have access to this, and we should be able to get it updated and out. So, other things, I guess this is season 2. I guess we're going to call it season 2, at least maybe book 2. Maybe book 2's better. I like book 2. Also, I've been busy on the farm. We had a snowstorm, and we also had limited technology at the house. It was a rough time with kids in the house and no Wi-Fi. So, still sober. Thank you. But anyway, have not just had a lot of things to get to. Of course, the holidays are in there, so we're excited because we feel the upcoming episodes, including this one we're kicking off with, which is very special to me because I happen to know the guest really, really well. We have a whole series on outlaws. Bank robbers, murderers. I mean, people who get hung, people who should have been hung, people who don't get so far to be hung what they're lynched, kind of like the Dick Cullen affair. And so a lot more of that coming if you like that. I've also got some traditional stuff coming up from our friends down in Arkansas. I've got a Bigfoot and a UFO episode in the making. And by the way, if you happen to hear this podcast and you want to share something along those lines, reach out. You can reach us at wildinwoollyozarks@gmail.com. So I guess we're back together. Also, if you love the podcast and like what we're doing and want to contribute, but you're like, I really don't know anything about that, but you know how to edit film, there are some specific things we are wanting to produce and produce it probably for YouTube, etc., as part of the podcast. But I want a visual on it. because there's no other way to really do it. So, also, I think we've got more treasure stories in the works coming down. I know several of you have spoke to me how you like those. So, one of the perks of this gig is the interesting people I get to sit down with and interview. It's even better when they're an old friend, and it's even better when that old friend has just written his first of what I expect to be many books. Webster Countyans will know him as Matt Owen. His real name, James Matthew Owen. I think the alias now is James M. Owen, now that he's a professional man. He is a native of the Elkland area in Webster County. He is a proud graduate of Marshfield High School, Drury University, and the University of Kansas School of Law. He has worked in private practice and was appointed Webster County Associate Circuit Judge by Governor Jay Nixon. He currently resides in Columbia, Missouri, where he is executive director of Renew Missouri. He is married with 2 children and a dog, and he's a heck of a nice fella. I can credit him with my knowledge, or maybe small, but what knowledge I have of film, as a thank you for me introducing him to a Zucker Brothers movie, which shall not be named. He took me to my first Tarantino flick, which was Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
That's been
It was my third time seeing it.
It's been like 32 years ago, my friend.
I know.
And so, James or Matt or whatever you're being called, welcome to the Wild and Woolly Ozarks.
Oh, I don't think I deserve that introduction.
Well,
but now I gotta go.
I'm going to go straight downhill from here, but hey.
Oh, how are you, champ?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. I've been burning brush piles, but what I'm really excited about is you've been out doing book signings. I missed the one in Springfield. I was under the weather, and we'd had a podcast scheduled. Was under the weather, and then I forgot one because I was out on the farm. And so we're finally getting together, and it's we've tried to do some true crime on the podcast. Of course, I like true crime as well. Sometimes I wished I hadn't listened to something after I do, but
Yeah.
I really like that this gives us an opportunity to talk about something more modern.
Yeah.
And the podcast tends to hang out, and I like true crime where all their relatives are dead, so they can't come after me.
Well, easier not to get sued if that's the case.
Yeah, right. So, but this one is rather recent history, and I remember when this happened, and when you couldn't talk about it, and then when you could afterward. And so, why don't you start the listeners off on kind of how you ended up where the story begins, at least for you?
Sure.
And
yeah, go ahead. Oh, so I've written this book about a guy named Roland Comstock, which in itself sounds kind of like a name. It doesn't sound like a real name to me. But he was my boss. He was a lawyer that practiced primarily on the north side of Springfield. If we want to go a little into history, he was born in 1935. Wait, is that right? No, it might have been 36. Sorry, it was 1936. And he was born kind of when Commercial Street was more of a railroad area. His dad was a fireman for the Stratford Fire Department. His mom stayed at home. He was kind of early on pegged as a bookworm, as kind of a young genius, did taxes for his neighbors, rented comic books to neighbor kids, opened a bookstore on Commercial Street when he was 15. And that was before he went to get his master's in British history at the University of Kansas City, which is now the University of Missouri, Kansas City. But he did not pursue a PhD because he decided there wasn't enough money in that. And that's why he went to law school. Now I tell this whole story about him. I've got all these stories about Roland. That's kind of some history about him. But I think the reason why people are going to initially be attracted to this story is because he was murdered, and there was a lot of mystery around the murder. There was no criminal charges brought against anyone for the murder or being involved in any other way. But there was a civil lawsuit that was brought by the firm that I ended up going to after I had worked for Roland, that filed a wrongful death civil suit against his ex-wife. And we got a jury to say she did it. Wow. And so, spoiler, but that's kind of the hook for this.
Okay. So why don't you, obviously, if someone gets murdered, there's a reason. And you've got this interesting character who's like something out of a British novel anyway.
Yeah.
Or so aptly named. And
yeah.
And he's a book collector. Why don't
yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I read the news stories at the time. I remember I had sort of, until your book came along, I sort of remembered just pictures of this or different things of the house even. So
yeah, because I talk a little bit about his he had this book collection when he was a kid, opened a bookstore.
Which bookstore did he have? Do you know?
It was called Addison's, and it was at 200 East Commercial, and the Webster County connection to that building is now it's owned by Joe Hosmer, and there is a French Cajun restaurant there that is quite good. So I would encourage you to go there if you haven't.
When did that bookstore close? Would it have still been up there when we were in college?
Oh, no. He had turned it into his law firm before then. He had kind of gotten rid of it. Now, you could see
That's right. That's right.
He had the sign up. As long as he owned the building. It said Addison's. But he didn't run it. He moved his collection from house to house, and every time the collection got too big, he would move until they got to this relatively palatial estate north of Springfield near McDaniel Lake, kind of in the Sauk River Valley there. He moved there. He bought that property in the mid 70s, moved there and built a house there in 1990, then added, excuse me, got a little bit of a frog in my throat, then added a 3-story library to that house. Dead authors at the top, living authors at the bottom, and had chandeliers and rolling ladders. And it was one of the most ornate things I had ever seen. And he would, in addition to just collecting books, he loved first edition books. He would go around the world collecting signatures because he believed that made them more valuable. I have talked to some book collectors who do not believe the first edition nor the signatures make a book more or less valuable or not, but I think that's a matter of opinion. He believed that and became friends with people like Salman Rushdie and Martin Amis and Jonathan Franzen and a bunch of other novelists like that. He had kind of his pet novelists that he kind of became obsessed with. He would get everything that they had written. He had a handwritten version of Brokeback Mountain by E. Annie Proulx for her New Yorker short story. He was obsessive about it. And he would boast, probably correctly so, that he had the only book collection in the world that was guarded by a pack of wolves, because he lived with a pack of wolves.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So we've got a 3-story library.
Yeah.
So we're in Batman territory here. We've got a 3-story library.
Yeah.
Very ornate. I believe if you go to newspapers.com and search Roland Comstock, you will find I think it's a Saturday or a Sunday edition that goes through that house and unpacks the case as it was thus far.
Right.
But now we've got a pack of wolves.
Yeah. So, he was married. He was married to a woman named Alberta. She's from Dade County. She was Alberta Van Sant was her married name before she met Roland. Roten was her maiden name. She they got married, and she heard about a pack of wolves, like a mother and her cubs, I guess cubs. I don't know. I don't have to use that phrase in the book. That were up for adoption. Now they had to adopt all of them because they are pack animals. They
Of
can't be
course they
separate.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did that. I
Thank you.
they adopted them and they kept them. And the funny thing, when you see these pictures of the house, champ, and I mean, and actually, by the way, the news leader just did a really good archival piece with a lot of stories about the murder and about him, because they did a lot of pieces about him. You
Did they
see these,
include the picture of the library? Because there was a
yes,
picture. Yeah.
yes,
Okay. So there you go, folks.
yes.
You can go see it
Yeah, you
there.
can go find that there. And actually, KY3, Ozarks Life, Chad Pline just did a really nice piece where he interviewed me, and then also had a lot of archival footage where Lisa Rose had gone to the library, and that was from 2000. And that's a great video piece as well. So he had these 8 foot tall, like iron fencing around the house. But what people didn't see was there's 3 feet in the ground. And it wasn't to keep the wolves from digging out, it was to keep neighbor dogs from digging in. Because dogs would go in there and just never come out. Cats would jump to the top of the fence, and they jump. I guess they were like attracted to the pheromones. I think that's how wolves attract their food. I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but that's what I've read.
Well, even if one of them was in heat, the dogs would be trying to get in there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yes,
So
without
it could just
question.
be that. But
Yeah. But so like neighbors would complain, and the Department of Conservation tried to take them away. But Roland, being the exceptional lawyer he was able to argue his way out of them doing that. So he got to keep them, and they were there with him till the end. Which
okay.
is which is just another interesting thing about this guy. Like, in addition to being this really incredibly, well-versed attorney in probate and estate planning law, because he was very good at that, he was also this book collector. He also just had this amazing house with these unusual animals there. I mean, that of itself could be a story, I think. But then at 70 years old, in July of 2007, he gets murdered. I mean, this guy had every disease you could imagine, champ. He had emphysema. He had cirrhosis of the liver. He had polyps in his throat. He had heart condition. He was diabetic. I mean, like, everyone thought he was going to die like any day. So when I got the phone call, because I was already at another firm. When I got the phone call that he had died, I thought, well, he just had a heart attack, right?
Had you just moved on by that point, or
Oh yeah, because and this I guess I kind of have to get into all of this because he was not coming into the office. There was no money. I was just horrified I was going to get laid off because he just wasn't there to teach me. Because I was pretty young in my career at this point. This was 2005, 2006, 2007. I had had no private attorney experience, and law school does not teach you how to be a lawyer. It teaches
sure,
you how to think about how it teaches you how to think like a lawyer, but that's about it. And that's a kind of a whole other thing anyway. But you don't know like anything. And so I just wanted to learn from this guy, and he was just interesting to me. But he just wasn't around because he was in this nasty divorce with his ex-wife. They had been married for 38 years. Oh, here's the other thing you got to learn. She found out he was gay. He would never say he was gay.
like late in life, or like early on, and held it over his head until
Well, it depends on who you ask,
okay.
because I know I talked to people who said that she knew. But then when you look at the record of the divorce and you look at the record of their lawsuits after the divorce, because they had a lot of lawsuits afterwards, it seems very clear to me that she believes that she had been living a lie, that she had been duped, that she'd been like hoodwinked by her husband. That is where a lot of anger came from. So it's hard for me to imagine that she knew. for sure. Although if you're married to somebody for 38 years, I mean, aren't you going to kind of know? I don't know. Anyway, or I
Well, did
mean,
he have, was he having affairs? Was he caught?
he was
Was,
going to a condo in Mexico, which he was saying he was going to a book conference, but then she found a matchbook that said this resort was catering to gay clientele. That was the quote on the matchbook. She found that, confronted him with it. He said, yes, it is a gay resort. I do not consider myself gay because I believe I just like the camaraderie of gay men, which is, I don't know, maybe a distinction without a difference.
yeah, I don't, that's kind of just a non-answer.
It's a non-answer.
It's
Yeah.
not really an answer, period.
Yeah, but I mean, he was talking to young Latin men online. He frequented this website called silverhaireddaddies.com, which is I
Ooh,
have to look if it's
ooh,
still there.
probably a
But
big
that's
Ricky
what's in
Martin
the
fan.
what's that?
Probably a big Ricky Martin fan.
Uh Man, that's his type. And he would have, and actually the weekend before the murder, there was supposed to be a guy that was supposed to come up and visit him, but they got into an argument. He didn't come.
You bet him
Uh,
the Wolves.
I don't know. They talked to him, and he just said they got into an argument. He just didn't. He was supposed to be there for a week. So he was going through this divorce. They got divorced, but then they had to fight over this house, and it was this very like War of the Roses sort of thing where it just became the house sort of became like this symbol of her anger towards him. And he was living there. She was not. She had moved to Fairfield, Oklahoma, which is where she was originally from, lived in this little house there. And I think that drove her crazy. I think the idea she was living in this little house, he was still living in their house, and she was convinced that he was dragging his feet and trying to sell it. And the day that the real estate listing expired on it because of the divorce settlement said you got to sell this house, which is pretty common in most divorce cases that you're not going to sell the house right away. You've got to have that kind of hanging out there. The day that expired was the day he was killed. That seems like an incredible coincidence to me. Yeah. It's also the same day she had to fire a law firm that was working for her in a lawsuit against him. I'm sure she was running out of money. I'm sure that she just thought that this was never going to end. And I think she drove from Oklahoma to Springfield to confront him about it. I don't necessarily know if she drove up there thinking she was going to kill him, but that's what she certainly did, in my opinion.
Do you think that her saying everything he did about going to the resort and everything was just potential cover for her later? Maybe she made that out to be a bigger deal than it was.
Well, what's funny is I got access through his estate to a lot.
Was he really gay, or was he more accused of being gay than,
well, he told me he was gay. And let me tell you what happened.
Okay, there you go. So, yeah.
Not that, and believe, like, I should probably put some context to that story.
How'd that come up?
Yeah. Not over drinks, but
were you wearing that mesh shirt again and the really short shorts?
No, yeah, I'm sitting down, so you can't see the shorts I'm wearing. So during this fight they had, he was still letting her come to the house to like watch the dogs when he was gone.
The wolves.
Which is the wolves, yes. She found photos that he had processed from one of these trips, and they were explicit enough. Okay, so she at some point, and this is like right when I first started working there, took these photos and took them to the probate court in Greene County, took them to the Greene County Public Administrator's office because Roland was representing that office, which is how I got into working for the Public Administrator's office myself, showing these off, thinking that she was going to ruin his reputation. And so the day that happened, he came into the office And he brought me in and he's smoking a cigarette behind his desk. And he's like, some people would call me a gay man. I do not consider myself gay, but you need to know what's going on. So he tells me all of this. And he's like, if you want to quit, I understand. And I'm sitting here thinking, I have turned down like 3 other jobs to take this job. Like, what am I? I can't quit. But it was kind of like a weird conversation to have with your boss that his ex-wife is going around with dirty photos of him to the court and to your client and trying to wreck him. What he didn't tell me is she's also trying to sell the law firm at the courthouse steps for money she says that he owed her. He didn't tell me that part.
Jeez.
Which seems like that would have been more upsetting to me at the time, if you want to know the truth. But that I did not know anything about at the time. So, yeah, I think he was gay. I mean, I think there's evidence of that, photographic evidence of that. Yes. Don't worry. There's no video component to this.
Well, right. This is an audio only.
I don't have them with me.
Well, I don't want to see them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
we can go deep without going that deep.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but I mean, the point is, they got the divorce done relatively quickly. The divorce took about 8 months, which, if you know the legal system, is not really that bad.
No.
But then this fight over the house and the fight over the money that he owed her, that went on until past his death. Like, the estate had to take over all those, and she didn't let up on any of it. And so, like, the book gets into some of that, because it's salacious. She was blackmailing him, not about the gay thing, but about something else. Which, in my opinion, it could have gotten him disbarred. What she was blackmailing him with, and he had been kind of using some estate funds to help pay his personal expenses. Yeah, I mean, it was, not good stuff. He's a complicated guy, right? I mean, I was like, oh, he's funny, he's got the book collection and everything, but then he's also kind of like everybody else, a little messy. And so, yeah, the book gets into all of that. But yeah, I mean, I was just out of, I had been clerking at the Court of Appeals in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
My judge was about to retire. Gosh, my judge had been appointed by Joe Teasdale, champ. That's how old he was.
Good grief, walking.
I know. This was like 20 years ago, but still, it was old then. And so I was just looking to get into politics more and to like learn how to be a lawyer. And Roland was just interesting to me because he, when he called me, he got my resume and he saw I went to Lawrence. I went to KU for law school. And he's like, so tell me, like, who's the most famous author from Lawrence? And that was his first question to me. And I was like, I didn't know anything about this guy. I didn't know anything about the book collection. I was like, what is he at? Why is he asking me this? But I actually knew the answer. I said, well, I would say Langston Hughes, but he's a poet, not necessarily a novelist. So I'm going to say William Burroughs, because William Burroughs had moved there and lived there like towards the end of his life and died there. And as it turns out, Roland was a big beat novel guy. Like, he loved Ginsberg and Kerouac and Burroughs. And I heard him take a puff out of the cigarette. He's like, oh, yes, that's very good answer. And I mean, I think that's how I got the job, because I knew that William Burroughs lived in Lawrence.
Kind of like the opening of a movie.
Yeah, it's in the prologue of the book. I tell that story just because it's a little strange for a law firm interview to get asked about William Burroughs. If anybody knows anything about Mr. Burroughs, he was a very odd guy. Put it mildly. A St. Louis native. He was from Missouri.
Yeah.
His family was like super rich, like owned a bank there or something, I think.
Yeah, I have seen that at one point, but I don't know that I've ever dove into it. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I actually, when I was in Lawrence, I actually read some of his books and I was like, I don't think these are for me.
yeah.
Like shooting up with bug spray and stuff like that. I was like, I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, and they tend to bounce around.
Yeah,
So
they're very they
I
have
like a story. You
yeah.
know,
I
which
mean, I
that is
certainly think
storytelling. It's just it's not my preferred method of consumption.
yeah, I think for whatever reason, like that was I mean, and I think maybe there was a little bit of the fact that he was like a gay guy living in Springfield and kind of very much felt like an outsider. And I mean, I do kind of get into that a little bit in the book that he was always kind of on the outside of the Springfield scene, right?
Mhm.
Like there's a scene there. There are families that have gay kids, but they get away with it because they're rich or
Right.
established. And he was a North Side guy, and I think just always considered a little too offbeat for a town that is somewhat conservative, somewhat traditional. Maybe not as much now as it used to be, but certainly then during his time of because he practiced law from the early '60s to 2007. He did it
Yeah.
for over 40 years, and it was a state rep. He got elected as state rep in 1964.
Yeah.
Didn't only lasted a term. I get into a little bit of like he basically got into a fight with every, like with the mayor of Springfield, with the Chamber of Commerce, and again that kind of solidifies his outsider status. But I mean, yeah, he just yeah, and I think there's a little bit about like just being on the outside of any community. And I think that certainly like maybe like the beat writers, because he mentions in something he wrote that when he went to jury, which is where I went to, he was the only person there that had a copy of Howl in his book bag and was the only member of the Young Democrats. And that's in the 50s, right? So, and then, after, I don't know, this might be interesting to some of your people listening, that his first job out of college was he taught French at Mountain Grove.
Wow.
That was his stop after college. And then he went to go get his other degrees. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I actually heard from a woman who said she dated him while they were both teaching there.
Hmm.
And she had kind of lost track of him. And I said, well, now you know what happened. He probably should have just kept dating you.
Well, the Comstock family is a big family and old family, kind of situated. Their farms were situated out there between Stratford and Springfield.
Yeah, and I don't get much into like beyond like his parents or his siblings, because there's just, I mean, I mean, I was basically told by my publisher, my agent, you gotta like, I mean, the book version you can buy is half the length of the
Sure.
original draft. Um, but that's what I wrote initially was not marketable. It was certainly interesting to me to write, but I don't think it would have been interesting for anyone to read. So so a lot of all that got omitted. A lot of stuff about the history of Springfield got omitted. And it all had kind of a purpose, and all kind of had sort of a purpose, but I understand people just want to kind of get to the meat of it. So I got to the meat of it. And so there's all this stuff going on with this guy. There's all this stuff going on with this conflict and dysfunction in
Sure.
his life. And I think there's a little bit of a tragedy to it. Just this that, yes, he was quirky, he was eccentric, but he was, yeah, he was driven by money, and his kids all, I mean, his sons all had substance abuse issues, and that should be familiar to anybody in Southwest Missouri. A lot of methamphetamine that went along with that. And that's all, and that's all really, as someone says in the book, it's a scourge of this state. Uh, and, um, and I'm certainly not the first one to write about it. I mean, I think Winter's Bone does a really good job of talking about that world too. We just lost that writer. Daniel Woodrell
Mm.
just passed away back in December. But yeah, so I mean, it's a journey, this story.
Yeah.
I don't want it just to be true crime. I mean, like I said, I know
Right.
that what sells books because I mean, and I think I understand there's an interest to it because it's about, what people think they can get away with, and then like, what drives people to that sort of thing. And then there's also kind of the legal component to it, which is, I think that is easy to define in a dramatic narrative because you've got one side against the other. There's a there's an outcome. There's a lot of speculation about what that outcome is going to be because there is a trial in this, even though no one was
Yeah.
ever arrested for this. There is a trial.
So if I could,
Yeah,
you see the place is falling apart.
yeah.
The divorce is never going to end. He's probably going to die before the divorce is over, given his health condition, if the wolves don't eat him. So I really wanted to ask the question: did anyone try to break in, and the wolves just really just tear him
Oh,
up?
well,
But
so yeah, there. I mean, while the house was pretty disheveled, there was no. I mean, okay, so everyone who knew the house knew that he kept the back patio door open all the time,
okay,
and that's how whoever killed him entered into the kitchen. And the fence used to have a security code, but it stopped working. So now it just had like what you do with your cattle pasture. You just have a latch,
yeah,
and you just lift up the chain, right? So that's the only so you can get in that way. Um, but the thing is, champ, because there was a lot of speculation initially about, well, did he invite some guy over or did somebody rob him? I'm telling you, I do, because there was no DNA found at the scene.
mhm.
Those wolves would have attacked anybody they did not know who had done something to him
So it need to be somebody who the wolves knew,
and trusted.
right?
And even like the kid, like even people who went to that house a lot, like his daughter, who is kind of I guess if there's a hero in the book, she's one of them. She was never comfortable with the wolves. The woman who did the cleaning for the house, which I don't know what she was doing exactly because the house was disgusting. She was always scared of the wolves. Um, the only person who really the wolves trusted to let in the house was Roland and Alberta. That was it.
Yeah,
And yes, I'm just convinced they would have attacked anybody else, and then there would have been piece of cloth or a trickle of blood or something, skin.
yeah,
But there was
sure.
no DNA there. None.
You're going to make a big puncture wound with any canine that big,
Yes.
and it's going to bleed.
Right. And so I just don't. And now, while there was money missing, his ring was gone. Uh, there was he had a book out, his most valuable book, or what he thought was his most valuable book, Lord of the Flies, was left on the kitchen table. I believe he was using that to negotiate for his life. I believe he was trying to give that to whoever was going to kill him to say, go sell this, take it. If you need money, just get out of my house, kind of thing. Um, but
And it was left there.
it was left there. Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't think people really quite understood why it was so valuable or why he
Well,
thought
why was that? What was Lord of the Flies? I read it in junior high, but beyond that,
everybody did. So I guess it had the author's signature, and the author claimed to Roland it was the only copy he'd ever signed because he hated the book, and he only did it because Roland was so insistent on it. So Roland believed it was the only signed copy of the book that exists.
wow.
That's William Golding, and I guess he just didn't like. He called it rubbish, which
Huh.
sounds very British.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. But I do think. He loved that book. That's all he talked about that book all the time. And so I believe that, and of course, the sheriff's department went around to pawn shops and couldn't find anyone who had tried to sell any books or anything like that. I mean, but again, the house was, I mean, as Becky says in the book, Becky Frakes is his paralegal, who was also kind of his like just right hand man. And she was, I just have to say about Becky Frakes, one of the most lovely people I've ever met, and I could not have written this book without, because she was the only person who got to read it as I was writing it, because she knew Roland better than anybody. And she was the executor of his estate and all that. So she, where was I going with that? I don't remember.
We were talking about you've moved on. You find out he's been killed.
Yeah.
And here's some of the details of it. And then there was some monkey business with the pistol, as I recall. I don't remember now what, but
oh yeah.
But where did the police investigation go? Because you got a murder.
Yeah. So, okay. So,
and he was shot and killed, correct?
Yes, he was shot 4 times. So just to kind of lay out the murder scene, he was in his kitchen. The killer was in the kitchen. 2 shots went over his head. So I think it's safe to say this person was not an expert marks person. He was shot through the chin. He was shot in the abdomen, and that's the wound that apparently killed him because he bled out of his liver. And he was shot twice in the back of the head, which I assume was like, oh God, I've shot this guy. 6 bullets. Right. No casings.
So it's a revolver.
That's right. Yeah, because they didn't have any evidence that it got, lifted.
It was a 38 or 38.
They believe it was a 38 Colt Cobra, which happens to be the same gun that Alberta Comstock was gifted by probate judge Don Burrell. Not the Don Burrell who's on the appeals court now. I just want to make that clear. His dad, who was like the probate judge forever. And Roland and him were very close. I mean, Roland, that's where he did most of, if not all of his practice. And Burrell, who was kind of a gun guy, from what I understand, gave her this gun. And she never went anywhere without it. Never went anywhere without it. But she claims to police, because they never found the gun. They never found this gun. There's like at least 3 stories about what happened to this gun. What Alberta initially told the police, what she told Greene County Sheriff's Department was, I was in the hospital. I'd had a stroke, I had a heart attack. While I was in the hospital, someone broke into my house and stole it. Now, this is a woman who would also say, I was so scared of my ex-husband, I never went anywhere without this gun. But then that was stolen in May of 2007. He was shot to death in July of 2007. This woman who claims that she was so terrified to be without a gun was without one for 2 months. And then, Champ, on the night of the murder, she goes to a gun shop at the Missouri-Oklahoma border. Like when it's closing at like 6 o'clock, is knocking on the door. The owner lets her in and she's like, look, I've lost my gun. I need a cheap 38 because I got to go do target practice over there. And she points towards Missouri. Because, I mean, he's literally right on the border there at Highway 60. And he sells her a gun. And he sees her drive off into Missouri. Now, that is the only person who saw Alberta that day, credibly, that says. Now, there was a gas station attendant in Monette at the Murphy Oil, which most people otherwise know as the gas stations in front of Walmart, who says that she identified her truck, there at about 7:15, 7:20, but never saw her. And now Roland was killed, they believe, around 8:10, 8:15 that night, because a neighbor said he heard 5 or 6 booms down the street. And, this is July 2nd. So, the natural question that the detective would ask is, how do you know they weren't fireworks? And he's like, well, when you live out in the country, you know what a gun sounds like, right?
Right.
So he knew it
so
was.
She would be at Monette, so she'd have about an hour and a half to get over there.
Yeah.
Maybe less than that.
Maybe less.
You can do that.
You can, I mean, I actually, for the civil case, we did do it. We tried it like at the speed limit, and you can do it at the speed limit if you stop and get gas. And I mean, you don't know how long she stopped.
Yeah, she would not want to get stopped. Whatever she was doing, she would
not
want to get stopped.
No, because then there would be, and then she didn't have a cell phone. She had a track phone. So those, I mean, that's back in the day when those things, I guess, are those things still a thing? I don't even know.
I think so. I think
they call them burner phones because like criminals use them.
Yeah. Tony Soprano always had one.
But there's no evidence. So this is the point about the Greene County Sheriff's Department, because I am relatively critical of them in the book, because I think there were some pretty significant mistakes made in the investigation. But I do have to say, and I do try to say this as much as I can, there's no direct evidence in this case. There is no DNA. There is no weapon. There's no ID of any kind indicating that Alberta Comstock was in Missouri in and around those days. There is her briefcase that was in Roland's library, which there's a lot of stories about how that got there. But my theory is she brought it, pulled out the gun. She was carrying the gun with it. And she just left it there in kind of the confusion of the thing. I mean, why would her briefcase be there?
Well, on the day that the thing expires, which on the she supposedly broke.
Yep.
The day she buys ammunition or pistol.
Yep.
She buys a pistol.
Yep.
And assumedly ammunition.
Yep.
And she's seen it in Monette.
Yep.
She comes in and the dogs, there's no problem with the dogs. Wolves.
Right.
And she leaves a briefcase. 7 things. Right there.
Yeah. But,
I think you'd slip that in front of a grand jury.
They did.
And the grand jury said,
issued no bill of indictment.
Okay, you're an attorney. I'm not. Why?
I mean, okay, for a grand jury to issue an indictment, you got to have probable cause, right? And I do believe that
for the listener, just real briefly,
sure,
exactly what that means. So, yeah,
someone probably did it. Is what that means, because to be convicted of a crime, I mean, I think people are pretty familiar with this standard. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. There can be no question the person did it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important standard, because if the state, if the government is wanting to take away your freedom or take away your liberty, they should have a high standard to do that. Right. But a grand jury or an arrest warrant, which is usually how things are handled with a judge, it's more probable than not that they did this. And I will say this, I know the prosecutor who handled it, Todd Myers. He is a judge now in Greene County, and he is an exceptionally good prosecutor. I've seen him prosecute murder cases. When I was clerking for Judge Sweeney, I got to watch him do that, and he's very good. So I don't think it was a matter of presentation. Can I say this? I'll say this. I talked to somebody on the grand jury. I'm not going to say who. And it was just kind of a coincidence. I ended up talking to this person. They just said it just didn't seem very clear to them that she had done it, or that they had any evidence that could pinpoint anyone who did it. That's what a person on the grand jury told me. And I got to be careful of that, because it's a crime to reveal anything from a grand jury proceeding.
But it's, I guess you can put her everywhere with everything on the right date. You just can't put her there.
Well, yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I think, there were problems with the clerk. She really couldn't quite remember what day she was working, but they pulled her time card and it was that night, but she couldn't remember that. The only I think she actually had a good reason. Like, she knew the time, because she's like, I watched the sun, and the sun was right over the Burger King when I saw this truck. And so you could pinpoint when that was too.
Yeah.
And she had gotten in some legal trouble. I think there was something involving a minor. And I think that was used to attack her credibility. It had nothing to do with this, by the way. But that's just how, stuff works. but the gun shop owner is pretty substantial to me. That she's buying a gun because she knows the gun she has is going to be tossed by the end of the night, so she's got to get a replacement.
Never recovered.
And never recovered. And I don't, and I mean, I would tell you that's where I think somebody else was involved with this. Um, those people are still very much around. I certainly talk about that in the book about who it was. There's a son who very much was upset about being cut off from the family, that he was running out of money and he was upset. But
and they were they were her children
that he adopted.
That he adopted. Okay.
So yeah, so she had 4 kids from a previous marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, Rodman, Sherry, and Faith. And then they had a child together, Stephen. And the thing about Stephen, and this is interesting about Stephen lived near Dad. Stephen was really close to Dad, but Stephen had trouble as well. I mean, he will admit, and I've talked to him, I've sat down with him, and he's interviewed me I interviewed him for this. He's had a history of drugs, and he was facing charges at the time, but he got the judge to agree to let him go to rehab, and he checked in the day before this happened to rehab in Clinton, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells me, and I think this is also something that points to somebody who knew the family. He does not believe that they would have gone there if they knew he was going to be there, because he was always kind of dropping in and checking in on his dad, feeding the dogs, wolves, and he was always kind of just around. So he thinks that whoever did this knew he wouldn't be there.
And the wolves didn't. He could handle the wolves, I guess, or he could tolerate them.
If he was feeding them,
yeah.
Yes. He said they would still be a little. Like when I went to his house, I had to keep my fingers in my pockets because they would nip. They would kind of, you'd be watching them, and then one would come around and nip at your fingers. I mean, it was like crazy, man. This is like, I can't believe I'm telling this story, but this is all true. Like this.
What point did you realize you're in a comic book?
You know, Champ, somebody I went to law school had said if I did probate law, it was going to be boring. I'm not sure that's how that turned out.
He never prosecuted. You end up working, and I know you get into this in the book, and we'll save some of that for there, of course, but you end up working for the firm. So you go to another firm, and then the family, I guess, do they absorb Comstock's firm?
Yeah, so I went and just for your local listeners, maybe your Webster County listeners, I went to work for Hosmer, King and Royce, which is Craig Hosmer's law firm. Craig and his family are well known in the Marshfield area, in the Webster County area. His dad had been prosecuting attorney and was kind of a colorful character himself.
Perennial candidate for everything from U.S. Senate to probate judge.
Yeah, and he was prosecutor, and my grandfather was sheriff, and I think
my granddad was probate magistrate judge.
Was the magistrate, yeah. So we all go way back with all of this. But Craig had hired me because his probate and estate planning lawyer had left to go take over a firm for somebody who got elected judge, and so I came in, and it was more established. It was kind of a little more stable. And certainly, I think it was probably better for me. They have a Marshfield office, and so I was able to spend a day a week in Marshfield, which was great. But then when he was murdered, I talked them into buying the firm, and they bought the files. And Becky Frakes, who really was the main reason that Roland's firm was able to stay afloat, was because she was probably the best paralegal in the city. We hired her, and she took over as the probate paralegal. And then I got the Greene County Public Administrator's work. And but because Becky and I were there, Faith, Alberta and Roland's daughter, Alberta's biological daughter, Roland's adopted daughter, she came to us and we filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Alberta for causing the death of Roland Comstock. Which, if you're asking, is that unusual? Yes, it's very unusual.
Happened to OJ.
Well, but yeah.
At least there was a trial first for that, but
that's true. But the idea that there was no criminal charges even brought against somebody, and then the civil suit was brought, I think, still remains the most unique element of the legal part of this. And Stuart King, who was Craig's law partner, who now regrettably is not practicing anymore because he had a stroke and is unable to talk, and to me is devastating because I learned a lot from him working for him, and he was maybe one of the best lawyers I've ever seen operate. But he brought this case and won. And nobody believed that was going to happen. But it really is. I mean, you can Google all that. I mean, I still think all the details of this book are worth it. Because there's also kind of a twist to that too. But I mean, Stuart really is like, the book at some point becomes about him as a lawyer and not about Roland. And I think just every time I would read his closing argument, I can't get over how good it is. Like I didn't do it verbatim, but man, it's astounding, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's all that. And I wasn't really involved with, I mean, I helped with the civil case, but I do not like litigation. It's one of the reasons I left private practice, is because litigation was very hard on me personally. I did not like doing it. I never really got very good at it. I'm very good at probate, just in case anyone's listening.
Yeah.
I'm very good at that, but I'm not, but that is a very different skill set than litigation. And but Stuart, oh my gosh, like I forgot how many jury trials he did, but it was close to 60 in his career, and that's a lot.
I'd always heard he was very, very good.
Oh my gosh. Funny story, or I guess I don't know if this is a funny story. My parents got sued by my uncle over my grandmother's trust. And Stuart ended up being their lawyer because I think when that lawsuit happened, I was still at the Court of Appeals. So thank goodness they didn't hire me to be the lawyer. He actually got that case settled during the deposition of my uncle.
Mom and Dad had an employee sue him for wrongful termination, and by the time it was over, it it's done. It was done before it started.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was him.
Well, yeah, he did. He would take on pretty much any kind of litigation. Like he just wanted a challenge.
Yeah, well,
I mean, he liked the money like any other lawyer, but
sure. My father would tilt at those windmills. He would be like, "By God, no! Hell, hired an attorney would cost me twice." Do it,
Yeah,
and he did.
He was amazing to watch. He was amazing to learn from. I hope this book can be seen as a testament to him as well. I think it is. So I got to write about two bosses.
Sure, that's fantastic. Well, before we go and before we tell people where they can meet you and get your book and all, I know a lot of people who listen to the writer of a book maybe want to get something about how they develop their idea, or maybe their writing habits. The writing's a craft, not an art.
Yeah, totally.
Do you mind unpacking that, kind of how you operate, and maybe we get into what you're working on next?
Yeah, so this. I mean, and so when I tell people like how long this took me to research and write, I have to have some caveats there. I started researching this in 2013, but I was in private practice at the time, got engaged, got appointed as judge, had to run for judge, lost being judge, moved to mid-Missouri to go work for the Nixon administration. had 2 kids, took over, like learned energy policy, was writing a film column for the Columbia Daily Tribune.
Right.
So dad died in 2020.
Yeah.
You know, I had all this stuff. There's all this stuff kind of going on in, you know, what we collectively call life. And so, you know, but at some point, like I was working on it here and there. And the point I was trying to make on this is at some point I finally just had to say to my board, because I report to a board at this nonprofit I work at. I said, you've got to give me a month to finish this. I'm close. And I think I realized that I have to be like, to write on something like this, it's got to be my primary focus. It's not one of those things I can dabble with. Like I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to dabble on some writing now, and I'm just floundering at it because I've always got something else I could be doing. But if I say that's my focus, like I'm working on another project, and I just took a week off in September, and I wrote like, I don't know, 30 pages in that week. And I was like, well, that's pretty good. That's 6 pages a day. That was pretty good output. I have to have that time. It also was important to, like, for me, and I tell people this because I think this is the hardest part of any storytelling, is have your ending figured out before you start. Like you can figure out the details up to that point, I think. And I think for this book, it was important for me to like figure out early on that I had to alternate chapters between the murder and his life. Like I couldn't start with one or the other. Like I just went, one chapter is about finding the body. The next chapter is about his childhood. The next chapter is about the first couple of days in the investigation. You know, once I figured out that pattern, it was much easier for me to write it, but I knew where it was going to end. And it's not a very satisfying ending, if you want to know the truth. I think I had trouble selling it because the ending wasn't satisfying, but you know, it's messy. It's like everything else. But I knew that's where it was going to end. And the other thing I tell someone, and this is another reason it takes so long, you got to read more than you write.
Sure.
I mean, you can't really like learn how to write. I mean, you have to do it. I mean, like, it's like a grind. But like, I don't know. I mean, if I hadn't read biographies, there's no way I could have written this book. I mean, I try to read true crime books, but this one, it didn't fit because those always focus on the murderer. Like, and I think if I have a critique of the true crime genre, um, it is that it is more focused on the murderer than the victim. That's not what this book is. This book is much more focused on the victim than the murderer. But I think because I had read so much historical biographies, I I used that style, and I could not have done that on my own. I'm not like naturally, like I wasn't like naturally inclined to do that. You had to like learn the rhythms and patterns of other writers, and some are better at it than others. So you find who you like, and you just, I don't want to say rip them off, but I mean you get their sense of rhythm, right? So like I think like I have to have like uninterrupted time to do it, which is hard to find because I got an 8-year old and a 3-year old, um, and 2 jobs. And then
And
I'm
a
trying to keep
dog
up
that you
with
were
the book.
picking up at various places, and a dog that you were chauffeuring.
And I do have to take my dog to dog daycare twice a week. Yeah, so I mean, I think that, like, but for me, like, it was important to get all the research done. I mean, I actually wrote like the first chapter, like that was kind of like something I really also want to establish. But I think having your beginning and your end, because I think some people just get lost in trying to get there and they give up. But if you know where you're going,
Mm-hmm.
that is what I needed.
Or
I don't do outlines or anything like that, but I know where I'm going.
I got over thinking I was going to sit down and write "The Sun Also Rises."
Oh yeah.
You know, if you've written a couple things and you're like, well, my God, I'll just sit down and make this happen. Yeah.
Well, you want it to be revelatory, but then
Yeah.
you're also satisfied. People just like, I really like that. That was really good. Like that's good enough.
Yeah. What's your go-to book when you need to get your mind right? What do you or books, or what's your favorite classic, or what do you go back to over and over?
The only book I've ever read more than once is In Cold Blood, which is funny because I say I don't like true crime books, but I've read that book like maybe 6 times.
Did you read it in high school? Did I encourage you to read that in high school? I read it in high school.
I read it in high school, and you might have encouraged me to read it. I read it. I actually wrote a paper about it in law school because I wrote about the history of the death penalty in Kansas, prism of In Cold Blood, which is interesting because, and maybe you'll find this interesting, in Kansas, those were the next to last 2 people executed in that state.
Right.
Still. Some KU student who killed his parents were executed after them, but they haven't executed anybody in that state in like 60 years.
Even though they have the death penalty.
They have the death penalty.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting to me as to why they don't use it as much as
I believe
just can't wait to kill people.
I believe I read that. I believe you sent me that paper, and I read that at one point.
So I was really proud of that because I was also working for the state Senate at the time. I was a law clerk for the Judiciary Committee, and they were looking at a death penalty moratorium, and I was researching other states, and so it all kind of and I was doing that for like a law and literature class, which did me no good because who would ever use that class for anything? But I love that class.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's one I like, but I really and I think it's just a matter of like what kind of book you're trying to write or like what you're trying to work on. Like I'm trying to do a mystery right now. So I read a lot of Gregory McDonald's Fletch books.
Oh, the ones the Chevy Chase movies were based off of?
Which John Hamm did one a couple of years ago, which is a riot. That movie's better than... Yeah,
I'm kind of out of it. I hadn't heard that. I'll have to check it out.
It's called Confess Fletch. And it's been because the Chevy Chase movies, Fletch is based on one of the books, but Fletch Lives, I think, is the sequel. That is not based on any of the books.
It was ridiculous too.
It's a little ridiculous, but it was nice to see Cleavon Little getting work. But he was in that, if you remember.
That's right. Right. That's about his last thing he did before he died.
Maybe, because he didn't work that much. But Gregory McDonald, I remember Kevin Smith saying like that's how he learned how to write was through reading Fletch books. And they're quick, they're efficient, they get to the point. I think if you're wanting to write something that is just purely entertaining and structured like a Swiss watch, those are the books to read.
Right, that's excellent.
Yeah. I think you could learn a lot from reading those. I know.
Mine's Hemingway's Indian Camp. It's like 806 words, and it's just perfect. There's not a misplaced word in it.
Never read it.
It's in the Nick Adams stories. That's my probably.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people have a favorite Hemingway one. Oh, Man in the Sea. Okay, big deal. Nick Adams stories are the best because maybe not. Maybe it's more reading for men, but for me, because you see a little boy who's a son and a brother with all the family stuff that occurs with that grow up, and to where he's a young man, he's making decisions, and ultimately he's a father. And they aren't in any kind of they're sort of in chronological order, but they're compiled after Hemingway died, because he always referred to himself as Nick. If he was writing in the United States, he was Nick.
I see.
Unless it was in one of the novels. If it was short story, he was Nick. Indian Camp, Big Two-Hearted River is a Nick Adams story. The Last Good Country, the ones where
there's so much to read. I just don't go back and reread stuff. There's always like this.
I'm starting to because I've reread a lot of books twice or maybe multiple times, because I wanted to see how they're structured. And there's a lot of things I'm content to leave at once, like James Fenimore Cooper. I've read all the leather
Oh,
stocking tales, and I'm
well, Mark
content.
Twain agrees with you.
I'm content, except for the one that was written first is one of the next to the last in the series. The Pioneers is probably the first conservation novel ever written, and
Oh, interesting.
it's way past the American Revolution. It's like in the early 1800s, and
Yeah, I
New
read
York
Last of
is
the
developing.
Mohicans.
It's a fascinating. It's actually the best of all of those books, in my opinion.
Yeah, I read Last of the Mohicans. I'm like, if I'm having trouble with those, I'm not going to be able to get through any of the other ones.
Well, my Robinson Crusoe, I made myself about 10 years ago read it. I had tried to read it when I was a kid. And if they'd cut the last 4 chapters off of that mother, it'd be a great book
Some
because
people
they
don't know
had
what
to
to
get a
say now.
certain amount of volume. And so in the end, they're fighting columns of wolves on this road, and they slay 1,000 wolves with rifles, and the men are all with muskets lined up, just like they're
Yeah.
Confederate soldiers at Gettysburg. And 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 I'm like, you just ruined the whole thing for me. You were going to get back home, and then you had to fight all these damn wolves. Maybe that's where Roland Comstock's wolves come from.
Maybe.
What happened to the
Yeah, maybe.
wolves? I got to ask though before we close up, and
Yeah.
and before we start telling people a few more things about you. What happened to the wolves?
One got loose and they never found it during when the cops were coming in and out. And then the other ones got sent to a conservancy in, is that the right word? I think it was like some wolf refuge place in Colorado.
So there is a missing wolf that was never recovered.
But yeah, long dead probably now because they were pretty old then. That was 19 years ago. So I don't know how long they lived, but I don't think they lived that long. So,
They say
but
that
yeah,
the legendary Ozark howler is nothing more than a native red wolf after they had pretty well been destroyed.
yeah, yeah.
So
I
I'd
mean,
be
I think
curious.
there's a lot of creatures out there we probably never see in
Yeah,
this part of the world, I guess.
or we mistake for something else, which I think is the big
Yeah,
part of it. Um,
that's
but
true.
well, if you don't mind, I want to thank you, Matt, for joining us
Oh my
today.
gosh, this is great.
And how can folks follow you? I know if you do a search around, you'll find some of the most recent interviews. The book is called The Wicked Among Us. And
Very
how
good.
can folks get a hold of you, get a copy, go to a book signing?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. I am on Facebook. I am on X at Mo Lawyer. I'm on Instagram at Mo Lawyer. I'm on LinkedIn, I guess, if anybody does that anymore other than losers.
Kind of like
And
the MySpace.
yeah, yeah. I have an Ask Jeeves account, but uh, and if but I will say, and I don't know when this is running, but I am going to be in Springfield on the 18th at a book signing there. I'm going to
The
be
18th of February.
18th of February at the Story House Bookstore on East Walnut. I am going to be at Skylark Books in Columbia the next night. Then on March 18th, I'm going to be at Drury to do like a lecture there. I haven't set that time, but it's going to be on March 18th. Yep. And then, but Champ, I am going to be for your Marshfield listeners. When is this? April 20. Let me see what day that is. Sorry, this is not very, I had not been thinking about this. On April 25th, for the Cherry Blossom Days at 2 o'clock, I will be at the Webster County Library and I will be talking about the book and I will be doing book signings. And so for your Webster County friends, I will be there.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if we all want to go hear him lecture at Drury, I think we should go as a group and we could do the wave. Maybe hold up a sign. Go, Matt, go.
I will give you more details on that. I think I'm going to get those locked down today or Tuesday. I'm working on it with a professor, a guy who was a professor of mine there, and he's working on getting it set up. And that's
Keep the
been
Wild and Woolly Ozarks on Facebook if you would.
Oh yeah,
and
happily
at those and let our listeners know, because we want to be the place where local authors unpack.
Yeah, well, I'd love that.
And by the way, I want to compliment you, even though this is an auditory strictly. You have a very neat office. It's very clean, at least the part I'm seeing. I've blotted mine out behind.
I'm not here enough.
Yeah, you'd make a bigger mess if you did more. No, I'm just fooling. You're a busy guy.
I've been in Chicago all week doing the audio version of this book, which will come out April 14th.
Oh, great.
Which
so for those of you who like audiobooks, and where will they be able to get that?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Probably anywhere you get your current.
I think rbaudio.com. RB Audio is the name of the company I've contracted with to do that. So I know that because I had to do the disclaimer. So rbaudio.com, go there, sign up for their updates, and they will let you know where that's available, because I don't.
Yeah. You're just a creative. You're not a technical.
Yeah, I know. I have those are like piddling things that I've got to have people do for me, I'm too busy counting my money.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I am so in the hole on this book, Champ. It's not even funny.
No, you'll have to write 3 more to get out, and I know you've got a plan.
Just looking
mystery and some other things. I'd actually like to bring you on again sometime. I've got a couple of death penalty things, 20th century, that I'd like to unpack, and I don't know. Anyway, we can talk about it off air, but I want someone to kind of nuance the legal aspect, as we've kind of done today, and I think you'd be a good candidate, so I'm going to draft you. But anyway, Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in, and our audience, if you've got a comment, please leave it. Be sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And if you got a message you need to get to James Matthew Owen, you know how to reach him, or you can send it through us at wildandwoollyozarks@gmail.com. All right. Maybe you have a wild story to share. Maybe you have a guest you would like to talk about. Maybe you're the local unpacker of local legends and lore and history in a county in the Ozarks, and you'd like to talk about it. We'd love to have you. Drop us a line. Once again, the email is wildandwoollyozarks.com. Well, folks, join us again as we pack more wild and woolly legends in the Ozarks. Y'all be careful, and boys, if you would, please be good to the tourists. Bye now.